Every empire falls from within. History has proven this fundamental truth time and time again across every single discipline in the world. For Carlos Alcaraz, the biggest threat to his ATP throne in the year 2026 is definitely not the deadly baseline forehand of Jannik Sinner or the tactical genius of his other rivals. The real danger is the man who always stands in the exact same frame, celebrating every single victory with him. We have seen the glorious moments on center court. We have seen the golden trophies lifted high in the sky while the crowds scream his name in pure joy. But to understand why the father of Carlos Alcaraz is suddenly becoming the ultimate destroyer of the tennis career of his own son, we must look straight into the cold and dark corners that television cameras never dare to broadcast. You are about to see a completely different side of professional sports. Carlos Alcaraz is not just a regular tennis player anymore. He has evolved into a massive global entity. He is a money-printing machine for the entire ATP organization. He is the absolute ultimate pride of the Spanish nation, and the chosen one forced to carry the massive torch left behind by the legendary Rafael Nadal. The expectations placed on his young shoulders are completely astronomical. Yet behind the glamorous Grand Slam titles and the blinding flash of the press cameras is a very fragile family structure. This structure is severely cracking under the brutal pressure of absolute greatness. We all know the beautiful historical narrative that the media loves to sell us. We know the vital role his father played since the very early days of this incredible athletic journey. The father took a raw, talented kid from a small Spanish town and slowly molded him into a global sporting icon. He sacrificed his own personal dreams to build this reality for his boy. He built the rock-solid foundation of a world champion. But history also shows us a very cruel lesson. The people who build the foundation are rarely the right people to manage the penthouse. The necessary transition from a dependent local prodigy to an independent adult champion is completely stalling. The casual fans watching from home just see a supportive dad clapping in the stands, but the deep tennis insiders see a completely different reality unfolding. They see a lingering control freak casting a massive dark shadow over the tactical mind of a generational genius. The Spanish media refuses to report on this because protecting the family image is a national priority. They would rather blame the weather or the strings on his racket than point the finger at the powerful patriarch. Look very closely at the raw statistics right now because the numbers absolutely do not lie. Contrast the fearless young lion of 2 years ago with the current version we see on the court. In deciding fifth sets this current season, the win rate of Alcaraz has plummeted in a way that makes professional analysts extremely nervous. During the most critical moments of high stakes matches, he looks entirely lost and deeply confused. He is actively hesitating on aggressive shots that used to be purely automatic reflexes. His unforced errors in severe pressure points have spiked to an alarming historical high. This is not a sudden technical flaw in his swing or a lack of physical preparation. This is a mental collapse happening in real time right in front of our completely shocked eyes. The toxic emotional interference radiating from his family box does not just stop at simple sideline advice. It is a suffocating cloud of absolute control that follows him everywhere he goes. The tension between his professional coach Juan Carlos Ferrero and his father is rapidly becoming a silent war. The coach desperately wants absolute tactical discipline, but the father constantly demands unquestioning emotional loyalty. This invisible battle is directly eating away his pure competitive will on the legendary grass courts of England and the brutal red clay of France. The pressure on the court is no longer just about hitting the yellow tennis ball over the net and beating the physical opponent on the other side. It is about carrying the incredibly heavy emotional weight of the constant expectations of a father who absolutely refuses to let go of the steering wheel. The intense Hispanic cultural pressure of family loyalty is completely trapping him. In his culture, defying a father is seen as the ultimate sin. He is paralyzed by the profound guilt of wanting professional independence while fearing personal betrayal. When a young man cannot make his own decisions on the court, he completely loses the killer instinct required to close out matches. This bizarre dynamic is completely suffocating the natural aggressive instinct that made Carlos Alcaraz so incredibly special in the very first place. You can clearly see the heavy weight crushing the physical shoulders of this young champion every single time he nervously looks up at the stands instead of focusing on his next massive serve. This toxic situation is rapidly reaching a critical breaking point that could ruin absolutely everything they have painstakingly built over the last 10 years. If you are feeling the intense anxiety of this unprecedented situation, and you truly want to uncover the deeper hidden layers of this massive ATP crisis, join our dedicated tennis community by subscribing to the channel right now, because the truth behind this dark family dynamic is only going to get significantly more twisted from here. Look very closely at the pleading eyes of Carlos during those life or death moments at the Monte Carlo tournament recently. We all saw the broadcast. But if you zoom in closely on the raw footage, you will notice something deeply disturbing. When the score is tied in the final set and the physical exhaustion reaches the absolute limit, the eyes of the champion do not search for Juan Carlos Ferrero. They frantically search for his father. Ferrero is the mastermind who built the tactical foundation of the player. Ferrero is the one who studies the opponents and formulates the winning strategies. Yet, in the heat of battle, the authority of the coach is completely bypassed. This creates an incredibly awkward and toxic triangle of power. Look at the body language inside the player box. The physical distance between the coach and the father is growing wider at every single tournament. They rarely speak to each other during the crucial tiebreaks. The silence is deafening. Who is truly in charge of the operation? Does the coach dictate the tactical shifts, or does the father dictate the emotional state? When a player receives two completely different signals from the box, the result is absolute paralysis on the court. You can see the pure confusion in the footwork of Carlos. He hesitates. He steps back when he should step forward. Why does a multiple Grand Slam winner suddenly look like a completely lost teenager? Why does the ultimate alpha of the ATP Tour need permission from his dad to hit a drop shot? The answers to these questions are extremely uncomfortable. The lines of authority are completely blurred. Ferrero wants to unleash a ruthless competitor. The father wants to maintain total control over his son. This is not just a simple disagreement over a backhand technique. This is a fundamental clash of philosophies. Ferrero treats Carlos like a professional athlete who needs to grow up. The father still treats him like a child who needs constant supervision. This dynamic is completely unsustainable at the highest level of professional sports. Opponents can smell this weakness. Players like Sinner and Rune do not look at their boxes for permission to win. They just take the victory. But Carlos is trapped in an invisible cage of family expectations. The mental energy he spends trying to please both his coach and his father is completely draining his physical stamina. Every single time he makes a mistake, he looks up to apologize. This is a fatal flaw in the modern era of tennis. You cannot dominate the world when you are constantly apologizing to your own corner. Let us dig deeper into specific moments. Remember the final matches of the last season. The physical exhaustion was obvious, but the mental exhaustion was the real killer. Carlos was not just fighting the guy across the net, he was fighting a phantom war in his own mind. Every forehand error was met with a stern look from the father. The camera zooms in on the face of the dad. There is no unconditional support there. There is only intense pressure and a demand for absolute perfection. Listen to the heartbeat of the stadium during these microscopic moments. Feel the heavy red clay under his shoes. The humidity is suffocating. The crowd is screaming his name, but he is completely isolated in his own mind. He looks to the box and sees a stoic father offering zero comfort and only demanding results. This creates a terrifying feedback loop of anxiety. Every missed shot equals parental disappointment. How many times can a young man absorb that level of silent rejection before his spirit completely breaks? We are witnessing the slow-motion destruction of a generational talent right before our very eyes. The human mind is simply not designed to process the stress of a Grand Slam final while simultaneously managing the fragile ego of a parent. This is exactly why the unforced errors pile up. The racket becomes incredibly heavy. The legs stop moving. The joy of playing tennis completely vanishes. This is the descent into a psychological black hole. The joy that defined his early career is being slowly suffocated by the heavy blanket of parental control. The smile that captivated the entire world is now replaced by a permanent grimace of anxiety. What happens when the most exciting player in the world loses his pure passion for the game? The entire sport suffers, but more importantly, the athlete suffers. The feeling of being trapped in your own success is a uniquely terrifying experience. He cannot complain because the world thinks he has a perfect life. He cannot rebel because his culture demands absolute respect for the family hierarchy. So he suffers in complete silence while the whole world watches him slowly unravel on live television. When family power blatantly overrides professional expertise, the collapse seems like a pre-written script, but that is only until you realize a truth that is even more cold-blooded. We have all been completely fooled from the very beginning. This massive roadblock does not come from blind family love or outdated technical interference. It is a brutal war of kings to control a massive money-printing machine. You need to completely forget everything you thought you knew about the relationship between a father and a son. This is strict corporate business. The father is desperately trying to manage an empire that is worth tens of millions of USD. Let that massive number sink into your brain for a second. We are talking about a corporate entity built around one single human being. Managing an enterprise of this insane magnitude requires teams of seasoned lawyers and ruthless financial executives. It completely exceeds the administrative capacity of a regular parent. Yet the father refuses to let the professional agencies take full control. He insists on being the ultimate gatekeeper for every single commercial deal and every single exhibition appearance. Tell me right now what you think about this dangerous level of financial control over an athlete. Do you believe a family member should ever hold the ultimate keys to a global sports empire, or does that always end in absolute disaster? Share your raw, unfiltered opinion down in the comments below, because this specific debate is completely tearing the tennis community apart. The sheer volume of money flowing through the Carlos brand is absolutely staggering. Every single patch on his shirt and every single shoe on his foot represents millions of USD in corporate investments. Nike alone poured a massive fortune into his new contract. Rolex demands a very specific, clean image. Babolat requires constant promotional activity across the globe. We are not talking about a few $1,000s in prize money anymore. We are talking about astronomical sums that alter the destiny of entire generations. A single exhibition match in the Middle East can generate over 2 million USD for a weekend of work. A new fragrance deal can inject 5 million USD into the family trust fund. When those kinds of numbers hit the table, the pure love of the sport is violently thrown out the window. The father is blinded by the lights of the corporate world. He is signing contracts that force his son to fly across multiple time zones just days before major tournaments begin. The financial stakes are incredibly high right now. The pressure to maximize profit while the iron is hot is overwhelming. And the father is the one trying to juggle all of these massive corporate chains while also trying to be a tennis dad. It is a mathematical impossibility to do both jobs perfectly. The numbers simply do not add up. The boardrooms of these massive sponsors do not care about the physical fatigue of the player. They only care about the massive return on their corporate investment. And the father, acting as the ultimate manager, is caught right in the middle of this corporate war. He is making crucial scheduling decisions based on financial greed rather than athletic longevity. Why does Carlos stay completely silent while his career is being aggressively mismanaged? The answer lies deep within the DNA of the Spanish culture. The concept of filial piety is incredibly strong. You do not disrespect the man who gave you everything. You do not publicly fire your own blood. Carlos knows exactly what is happening to his body and his mind. He feels the immense drain of the relentless schedule, but he is paralyzed by the moral obligation to be a good son. He is choosing family loyalty over his own physical survival. He is silently sacrificing his own historical legacy to keep the family bank accounts overflowing with cash. This is the darkest secret of the entire ATP Tour today. The golden boy of tennis is basically a highly paid hostage to his own family business. He is trapped in a golden cage built with millions of USD. The smile we see in the commercials is a completely manufactured illusion, masking a deep internal crisis. And the classified numbers hidden behind the secret ATP contracts will clearly prove exactly why this desperate grip on power could completely destroy a living legend. Medical data and tournament schedules never lie. Look at the meaningless exhibition matches that drain his energy, which Alcaraz is forced to play, completely against the red alerts from his medical team. Just look closely at the late off-season calendar of last year and the incredibly packed schedule he is running right now. The medical staff, led by Ferrero, explicitly demanded a 6-week absolute rest period to heal the dangerous micro-tears in his right forearm. The physical therapist drafted a strict recovery protocol to protect his future. They knew his explosive movement style requires absolute peak physical condition to survive the brutal ATP tour. What did the management team led by his father do instead? They completely ignored the doctors. They booked a massive exhibition tour across 3 different continents in less than 14 days. They aggressively chased the massive appearance fees instead of protecting the athlete. We are talking about millions of USD guaranteed just to show up and hit a few casual forehands for wealthy billionaires. The corporate greed completely overrode the medical science and the pure logic of sports physiology. He flew from Europe to the Middle East and then straight to the Americas in a blur of private jets and red carpet events. The jet lag alone is enough to destroy the nervous system of an elite athlete, but they pushed him out onto the court anyway. This is not a wild conspiracy theory cooked up by angry fans. This is a documented schedule that you can easily verify right now on the official ATP website. When a professional player logs that many air miles during a supposed recovery period, the biological consequences are absolutely devastating. This directly explains the bizarre cramping incidents we saw early in the season that shocked the entire tennis world. A 22-year-old supreme athlete does not suddenly lose the ability to walk in the 3rd set of a routine match unless his body is secretly screaming for help. The human body is keeping a strict physical receipt of all those greedy business decisions. The cramping and the constant heavy wrapping on his right thigh are the physical manifestations of a terrible management strategy. His body is literally breaking down in real time because his family treats him like an indestructible cash machine instead of a fragile human athlete. We have actually seen this exact same tragedy unfold before in the tennis world. If you have followed the sport long enough, you know the terrifying history of the parent syndrome. Look at Stefanos Tsitsipas and the chaotic circus that surrounded his father Apostolos. That toxic dynamic completely stalled the Grand Slam trajectory of a brilliant Greek talent. Tsitsipas lost crucial years of his absolute prime trying to fire and rehire his own dad while his rivals pulled far ahead. Go even further back in tennis history and look at the intense trauma Andre Agassi suffered under the brutal dictatorship of his father Mike. Agassi openly admitted that the relentless pressure made him literally hate the sport of tennis for a massive portion of his career. This is a recurring disease in professional tennis that destroys legends before they even peak. Parents who sacrifice everything to build a champion eventually become the exact ceiling that stops the champion from reaching ultimate immortality. They hold on too tight and completely crush the delicate psychology of the player. The father of Carlos is repeating these exact same historical mistakes, but on a much larger financial scale. The warning signs are flashing bright red across every single stadium he plays in right now. The medical team is furious but powerless. The tennis experts are whispering constantly in the locker rooms. The major corporate sponsors are getting incredibly nervous about his physical fragility. The evidence of this internal decay is everywhere if you just know where to look. These glaring pieces of evidence bring us straight back to the critical question that has haunted the tennis world from the very first minute. Carlos Alcaraz Sr. is the biggest test in the career of the 22-year-old player, more brutal and difficult than any forehand of an opponent. Without an internal purge to separate family emotions from the professional machine, his era of dominance could close right before it truly explodes. The cold and hard truth is finally exposed for the whole world to see. The father is undeniably the biggest burden on the heavy shoulders of the young champion today. This is not because he does not love his son. It is precisely because he loves him so much and is so deeply emotionally invested in his creation that he has completely lost the ability to step back. He lacks the professional self-awareness to realize his massive presence is suffocating the very empire he helped build from the ground up. Carlos is standing at the most critical crossroad of his entire life right now. The physical talent is absolutely unquestionable. The work ethic is completely phenomenal. But raw athletic talent cannot overcome a fundamentally broken and toxic management structure. To truly dominate this incredibly ruthless era of modern tennis and secure his spot among the absolute immortals, he must execute the most painful and ruthless maneuver of his young adult life. He must fire his own father from all professional duties and business negotiations. He must forcefully amputate the emotional family ties from the corporate and strategic decision-making process. This is the ultimate test of his maturity as a man and as a global icon. Can he look the man who gave him everything straight in the eyes and tell him to leave the player box forever? Can he reclaim his own destiny? Jannik Sinner absolutely does not have this problem. Sinner operates with a cold and clinical professional team that solely focuses on winning tennis matches and optimizing his physical peak. If Carlos wants to reclaim his absolute iron grip on the #1 ATP ranking, he has to make this massive personal sacrifice. It is a harsh choice between being a dutiful Spanish son and being the greatest tennis player in the entire history of the sport. He simply cannot be both at the same time anymore. The tension is building to an absolute breaking point behind the scenes, and the silence is deafening. An emotional explosion is guaranteed to happen very soon. Will he make the ultimate sacrifice to cut ties with his dad and secure his massive historical legacy? Make sure you are subscribed to Tennis Pulse right now so you do not miss our next deep dive when this inevitable family explosion finally happens on the world stage.